Article 8, Borrowing and Appropriation, Capital Improvement for Fiscal Year 2025. Article 8 seeks town meeting approval to borrow up to $900,000 to replace a fire engine for the Tyngsborough Fire Department. This request was submitted to the Capital Asset Management Committee, which comprises of representatives of the School Committee, the Select Board, and the Finance Committee, at the recommendation of the Town Manager and the Fire Chief. For the last 4 years, the Fire Department has included on their 5-year capital plan the need to replace Engine 2, which is a 2000 fire pumper stationed at Station 2 on the east side of town. Last year, it was a top priority for the Fire Department in fiscal year 25, but because the town endeavored to not do any borrowing in 2025, the town worked with the Fire Department to fund 2 other critical requests using the remaining ARPA dollars. However, over the summer, Engine 2 began to experience serious electrical issues. At first, the engine did not operate lights and sirens, which was okay because it was never the first due apparatus. It could respond with traffic to a fire, and the most important part was that the pumper was able to put water on a fire quickly. However, in the last few weeks, the electrical issues have gotten worse, and at times the pumper was not functioning the way it should, and water wasn't able to be pumped onto a fire. While we have made temporary corrections to the fire truck, and as of today, the engine works the way it's supposed to, the technicians that worked on it cannot guarantee that the truck will continue to operate in a manner that is sufficient for public safety for much longer. As such, we are recommending that town meeting approve the authorization to borrow up to $900,000 to immediately replace that engine, which will be surplused, so that we have adequate fire protection on the east side of town. We have already identified 2 demo models, which are available as early as immediately following town meeting, and if those get sold before we're able to purchase it, we have identified a vendor that has a truck coming in February that could have it put together well ahead of the May town meeting. That's why the Select Board, Capital Asset, and my office felt it was prudent to present this to town meeting now. The only other note that I'll make is that this item would most certainly have been a top priority for the Capital Asset Management Committee in May, and due to the lack of ARPA funding, we would return to borrowing, so whether we borrowed the money in October or we borrowed it in May, this item would have to be funded by borrowing. And finally, we have not done any borrowing for capital projects in the last 3 years because of the availability of ARPA funds. When we think of borrowing, most notably, of course, we recently allowed for borrowing on the new middle school, which is a debt exclusion. That's a debt that is paid on top of your regular taxes. I want to be clear here that borrowing for a capital item such as this fire truck is not a debt exclusion, does not increase your tax bill, but rather the debt service is funded through the operating budget, which is of course subject to the limits of Proposition 2.5. The Capital Asset Management Committee recommended unanimously that this be presented to town meeting for a vote.